Partakers has transformed my life in so many different ways. I have real hope and I think real potential now to have a productive, healthy life. You know, in other words, it saved my life.
My name's Jeanette Hamlin. I founded Partakers in 1997. It came out of my experience of working inside the prison system as a social worker. And the name really came from this idea that this isn't going to be about people who have their act together going into prisons to fix people who don't have their act together. That this is much more about all of us coming together as partakers. That the only way that we can really do anything is if we all work at it together and all see ourselves as equals.
It has been a very exciting journey. It was such a warm experience. It felt like we knew him. You had your mind set, you had a goal, and I'm like, why is this guy inside this wall?
Everybody knew about Partakers because I talked so much
Right,
about Partakers.
right.
Why do I walk differently? Why do I carry myself differently? And I go into this whole explanation as to how I've arrived where I have arrived in essence, and what it took. And of course, in giving that whole spiel, Partakers comes up.
When I was in class and working really hard to try to do well, part of my motivation was for my family and for my mentors to show them I had done something positive and I wasn't like just a screw up person and could achieve things. And I was really unsure of that.
90% of those women have never had somebody care about them. They've been put down, beat down, hurt in too many ways to actually open up their hearts to think that somebody thinks they're worth the time. They're learning that they're important enough for somebody to care about.
They just seemed like they really believed in me, and yeah, it made me believe it myself.
Once individuals begin to have the opportunity to learn, to grow, to change, to build their own self-awareness, their own self-esteem. For me, it was so amazing and so satisfying.
The support went much further than education for me. I didn't have family backing me. Like some people have family that can help them and support them in their decisions. I was literally doing my time by myself. I didn't have family supporting me. I didn't have friends standing by me. I had Joanne, and Joanne was the letters of support. And if I was having a bad day or I needed something for school, she would be the one that did it. When Christmas came, I had cards coming or I had packages. And if I needed a book, she would be sending me that book. So she became so much more than an education mentor. She became a friend. She became family.
Partakers played a large part in instilling hope in myself. The individuals who were involved in Partakers, although they didn't have to, really just went above and beyond the call of duty in regards to just offering support in so many different ways.
I have gotten more out of being a mentor than I think I had originally thought. I've learned that you were way more than the crime that you committed.
In that environment, you don't see too many smiling faces a lot. So it was almost like sunshine for me coming from in the shade in the prison.
Investing in Partakers is an investment in society. 99% of the people that are incarcerated will be returning home. It's just a question of how do you want them to return home.
The transition is very crucial. There's so many different prisoners who get out of prison and they don't have a support team or support system set up. And those are usually the ones who end up going back within a very short period of time.
joining the empowerment classes. It was just like having that community of support again, feeling sort of grounded by that was just really so valuable to have first coming out, deer in the headlights. Seeing how on board and excited like my mentors were for me just made me more excited for the future and like, yeah, I can do this.
What we need is a growing awareness and compassion for the similarities between us.
I think it just gave us a completely different view than we ever expected. It made me feel very encouraged that if we had more of these programs, what a difference that would make.
All we can do is answer that call to go in, because there are true human beings that are sitting behind bars. And I have proof.
Partakers is a lever which changes people's lives. When you change one person's life, you change their family, and it ripples out into their community.
There's no organization that parallels what Partakers does. The word transformative isn't big enough.
But the second we met you, you made a connection with us. And that's something that has inspired me and amazed me ever since knowing you. I've had the best conversations with you, either in person or in correspondence, than I've had with most people in my life.
It's really good to be able to just, bring your most authentic self to someone. And to be loved unconditionally, So once you get a taste of that, you just can't go back.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, for sharing your time and your hearts with the Partakers organization. I want to thank all of you who are here, our scholars, our mentors, our supporters. And first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Monique Jimenez, and I am the current chair of the board. And I'd like to take just a moment to thank the immediate past chair, Ray LaFrance, for his leadership of the organization. So a round of applause for Ray. And it is my great honor this evening to introduce our executive director, Arthur Bembury. With his leadership over the past 17 years, we are going to have another 25 years of Partakers. And yes. Partakers has moved from this beautiful, loving organization which supports scholars on the inside to expanding that reentry scope to supporting our scholars and returning community members as they come home with the Partakers Empowerment Program. And the beautiful thing is that Partakers is evolving as the needs of our scholars and our community is evolving. And so without further ado, Mr. Bembury.
Thank you. It's great after working for an organization for so long to see everybody here that supports us as friends, as collaborators, as partners. It's really heartwarming. We started off as a small organization, and at times it was rough. We didn't know if we could get to the next step. But I'll be honest with you. There'd be no Partakers without you guys. There would be no Arthur Bembury standing here in front of you doing this without your support. I mean, we have enormous support from all over the greater Boston area. It's so heartwarming. And you don't see all of the wheels that are turning to make this organization run. There are a lot of people doing a lot of things. And I'm just here as a steward of the organization. I'm so proud and privileged to be a part of an organization, a part of this community that wants to help other people change their lives and make things better for them. There are a few folks that I'd like to thank off the top of my head that are so meaningful to us. Brian O'Halloran from the Boston Red Sox is here, and he has stepped forward and supported our students in their continuing education. I'd like everybody to give him a round of applause, please. As Partakers grows, we are making connections with folks that are walking the walk. They're putting the money where the mouth is, and they're supporting our students with continuing education. So with that said, I'm not going to speak very long because this is a short program, but I just wanted to say that the future is so bright for us. You know, expanding with different organizations and collaborating. Organizations like the Lenny Zakel Fund and Jude Goldman have stepped forward and just supported our organization past the point of where we could even believe. They don't just throw money at you, they throw resources at you. And that's what makes an organization like ours grow. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming here. I know I'm supposed to say a few things like, please mute your cell phones, tell you where the bathrooms are and the exits and all that. If I run, just follow me, okay? That's the way that works, okay? Seriously. But there's so many people to thank. And I just want to say this before I go any further. I want to introduce some of the folks that matter, some of the people that you support. It's easy for me to run an organization and to be with it for 20 years or whatever, and to come up here and speak about how great the organization is. We have a fantastic board, and they're here. You'll see members of the board afterwards. You can walk up to them and speak to them about the program. Afterwards, we're going to have a book signing with Mr. Foreman here in the back, so you guys will be able to take advantage of that too. But before I go any further, I wanted to bring up the folks that matter the most to me anyways, and that's the students that are in the program. And I call them my colleagues, my partners, and my friends. So Ezekiel Iyavanga, could you please come up? And I hope I said his name right.
Thank you. And just so you know, it's Iyavanga. The G is silent. Okay? In 30 years, I don't want that to happen again. Just saying. What can I say? In thinking about what I was going to say, I think I just realized I don't even have to think. It's quite simple for me. My gratitude is I can't really quantify it. And the reason for that is it's changed not just my life, but actually, in all actuality, my family's life. What Partakers did for me was help me achieve a life chance. And if you don't understand what I'm saying, when I say it's a life chance, is being in that environment, it gave me an idea and a will to push forward. I had mentorship, and the power of mentorship is, I think it's not talked about enough. It's very, very powerful. It's part of transformation. Sometimes we are self-starters, but a lot of times we need that little push, and that little push is not. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It comes from mentors who have a vested interest in you succeeding. Now, I'm a kid that grew up in New York City. Anybody here that grew up in New York, if somebody is just smiling in your face and you don't know them, the first thing you think is, what is your deal? Like, what do you want? And for me, it's the best decision I ever made in my life to really say, I'm going to open up, because my mentors are now my family. And this is one that I picked. And those are the best ones. Sorry, Dad. But it really is something that I just cannot talk about enough, because I look back now and I say, wow, I have nieces who look at me and they are now inspired. They're young and they have no excuse, because if Uncle Z could do it, guess what? They can't say anything, right? And that is motivating in itself. And for me, I've just realized that the power of mentorship it should be talked about more. There are a lot of men behind the wall, a lot of men even on the outside now who need that. And I think what Partakers is doing is just something that the world really needs. I'm going to keep it short and simple because I talk for a living. I can sit here and talk forever. So I'm just going to mosey this way. Thank you, guys.
Try to get that name right next year. AJ Hanna, please.
Like Ezekiel, I honestly could talk all night about the impact Partakers has had on me and that I've seen it have on others. But since I've only got a few minutes, I just want to share a couple of moments when Partakers' presence in my life not only provided me with support and resources, but changed the way I thought about myself and my future. I was just talking to my dad yesterday about the serendipity of things and how if I hadn't had a roommate who'd been in Partakers and told me how to apply, I might not have ever known about it. He told me I could see it that way, or I could see it as choices. I chose to make the most of my time and join Boston University's PEP program. My mentors chose to sign up, come into a prison for the first time to visit someone they'd never met, and to stay with me through the ups and downs. I remember being a bit nervous because any of us who have been incarcerated invariably wonder how we'll be seen or if we'll be seen when re-entering society. To this day, I remember the way my mentors looked at me and spoke to me like I was a friend, just a person. It may sound simple, but their commitment to me and enthusiasm at my progress, their belief in me, it made me want to do my absolute best for them. And for me too, because they helped me believe in myself. With their help, I was able to leave MCI Framingham with a credit equivalent of an associate's degree. And the other moment I want to highlight is it happened during my first week of release. Everything was overwhelming. I never thought I'd say that CVS felt huge and had too many choices, but it did. Everything was really daunting. But then I got a phone call from Arthur, and he was so excited for me. My mentors were so excited for me. He talked to me for almost an hour about all that Partakers could support me with, opportunities, the empowerment program. But most of all, after that phone call, I felt hope. And I was excited too. Things didn't seem as daunting because there were people who understood. And things were a little less overwhelming because I wasn't alone. These were really pivotal moments in my life, and they are for many who have been impacted by incarceration. I know my family is just as grateful to Partakers as I am. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is be there for someone and believe in them, and that's what Partakers does. I now work in my career field as an editor and set to graduate with my bachelor's degree from Boston University this spring. Thank you. And I absolutely know I could not have done it alone. So I want to thank Partakers so much. And I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Like you say, Jay, that's so cool. Lynn Sullivan. I'll stay up here a little bit longer because this is my partner here. I gotta
So hi, I'm Lynn Sullivan. I did not write anything for this, and I never usually do, to be honest with you. I sort of take it from the heart. My Partakers, let me see, they were everything for me. I was in a prison system doing a life sentence, and I did not have family support or really friends at that time in my life. I wanted to go back to school, but I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. And at the time, you needed to have credits to go to school. I didn't have those. Partakers stepped in. And they said, you know what, we'll get your correspondence courses going. We'll get you those credits. We'll get you some mentors, and we'll get you all the way into the Boston University prep program. Sure enough, they did. They did every step of the way. My mentor came up her very first time, Joanne. She came up to visit me. I was in solitary confinement. She sat in the waiting room for over 2.5 hours before somebody finally told her, yeah, she can't come. And she left, and people were like, we don't know if she's actually going to make it through this. Maybe we should rethink this. And Partakers is like, no. Joanne, the mentor, was like, no, I'm coming back. She came back every month after that for the last 10 years when I was in there. She is my family. She is my friend. She is everything to me. But while I was incarcerated, I hadn't been in school. I didn't know how to study. I didn't know how to trust people, let alone have some strangers coming up and saying, hey, I care about you. Why are you coming up here saying you care about me? You don't know me. But they did. They came up because they believed in me. When you say believe, you're right. You have a stranger believing in you because they see something in you that you don't see. And depending on how you were raised, maybe you never had anybody tell you could achieve something or that you can make it. I was one of those. But she said I could. When I couldn't get through a homework assignment and I had all this red written all over it, I was like, that's it, I'm done. She'd be like, no, you're not. We'll get you another book and you can read in that and we'll fix all those reds. And she did. So when I didn't have resources, she would put them in the mail for me to make sure I had them for my reports. When I didn't think I could do it, she was right there for me every step of the way saying, you can do it. And just her showing up made me believe in myself and gave me hope. But not just hope, it gave me dreams like, damn, I could actually start dreaming about something now. I can actually do something that I never thought possible and be something I never thought I could be. I got to find who I am and create that. Couldn't have done it without Partakers. Partakers is my whole goal, my whole family. They supported me every step of the way. So with that, Joanne has stood by my side and she's watching, she's streaming. Unfortunately, she was not able to come here tonight. And I am grateful to be here because Partakers is the best program I can ever think of. So thank you.
Lynn's being modest. What she didn't tell you, she's the regional director of the PD Green program that supplies tutoring for all of the prisons in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Just completed her master's after getting her, right? and just purchased her first home a few weeks ago. Right? That's what she's not telling you. Those are the stories that matter to me. Those are the people that are close to my heart. But again, I want to say, and I want to be very clear about this, that Partakers could not exist without our mentors. They are the core of our existence. And today, we can't thank all 400 of them, right? But there are a few here that I'd like to come to the podium and say a few words. So Sally Chrisman, who has also been on our board and for forever, has been supporting us. You say a few words.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so touched by your words. Thank you for people who just talked about the value of mentorship. I was a mentor. I've been a mentor for about 20 years, something like that. And Melanie McFarland, who was a friend of Jeanette Hanlon, who I believe started Partakers, recruited me. Yeah, thank you. You should stand up, Jeanette. Come on. Yeah. She recruited me at Trinity Church about 21 years ago, and I've now mentored 4 students over that 20-year period, and it's probably been the most definitely it's been the most meaningful volunteer experience I've had in my life. I've been in the field of education for most of my life, and I know what education can do and the power of education. I think that the statement that education changes lives is just particularly important in the prison setting. I think we know that from statistics and reports, and we certainly know it if we sat in the visitor room discussing courses with our students. So it's been an enormous privilege for me to to be allowed to be a mentor. I've learned so much, and there have been many, many people who've accompanied me on this wonderful journey over the years. I'd like to just mention four in particular. Arthur, of course, who, I mean, I keep saying, if a big hole in the earth opened up and Arthur disappeared into it, what would we do? Well, we don't know, so let's hope it doesn't happen. And my mentor partner for many, many years, Babs Clough, who was going to try to get back here from Ireland for this event today, but I don't think she made it. And then particularly the students I spent so much wonderful time with, Dana and Vianxa May, who was hoping to be here today, but had to go to a wedding in another out of state, I think it was. But thank you so much. It's really been a great privilege for me.
Sally is also a long-standing board member too, so thank you so much. Gordon Robinson. It's Gordon Stevenson. Come on up, fella, please.
Thank you, Arthur. I wrote out something and then I crossed it all out and made it a lot shorter, so this will be rather quick. I want to thank you so much for being a good friend and for doing everything that you do. But I also want to thank all of you folks that are here, because it's really important to continue this work. And it's not just you. There's a lot of people who wanted to be here who couldn't come. I come from Cohasset, from a small church, St. Stephen's, and we had one of the people that's in our parish who's watching today, I hope, from North Carolina, Chuck Kropp, in the early 2000s had Jeanette come down and talk to us. And a number of people got quite inspired. We've had quite a few mentoring groups out of that little church since then. We're hoping to have more, God willing. But it's not just you guys and the mentors, it's other people who have supported Partakers in many ways, either through recruiting or fundraising or making gifts of their own. And some of them are watching today and couldn't be here. So I want to thank all of them, and particularly the people down in St. Stephen's. Please persist and persevere in this work. It's really important. And it's important to talk to people who aren't involved. In a place like Cohasset, there are quite a few people who never think about prison and have never considered going to a prison or to meet people. And it's critical that we try to keep doing that. And just remember one thing which the Dalai Lama once said: if you ever feel that you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. Thank you, Arthur.
Spoken like a diehard Chicago Cubs fan. This next person that I'd just like to bring up before we get on with our program is so important to me. And I think you should know why. Is because for years, while I was serving time in prison when I was younger, she was my mentor. She would come to prison and visit me and support me. And when I came home, offered me a job with this amazing organization, Reverend Margie King Safford, please.
Well, I need to thank Jeanette Hamlin, because I was at Andover Newton Theological School and people knew that I was interested in prison work. And they said, you've got to go talk to her. And she was walking across the campus and I went running. And at the time, you were mentoring Arthur. And then it became too much and she asked me. So thank you, Jeanette. It has been a very mutually wonderful relationship. But I think I'm going to, well, no. So when I would first visit Arthur, he was just so impressed with our organization that he was planning all kinds of things that we as an organization could do. And so that's one reason why we offered him a job. But anyway, I then, Arthur asked me if I would speak at his parole hearing, which was my first parole hearing that I'd ever gone to. And one of the members on the board, oh, and Arthur was always talking about raising money when I would visit him in prison, and how we could do it and this, that, and the other. And so I mentioned that. And so this parole board member says, well, what happens if he doesn't? What are you going to do then? And, you know, I'm always thinking, well, what's behind that question? What do you really want to know? And then all of a sudden I said, it doesn't matter. He is so smart. He's going to be a contributing member. And I just saw the board's face change and just nodded, okay. So Arthur has been, as you all know, this phenomenal leader, executive director, and he's become a very dear friend. And I want to quote my husband, who is an educator, because I think we've heard from all the people who have been mentored and from our mentors, this philosophy that we at Partakers do. And really, and it's a philosophy about what a teacher can do. And it is tell every student you have, I believe in you. And I know you can do it. And I'm not going to give up on you. And each of the stories we've heard today really have had those 3 points. So that's what we as mentors do. Thank you.
Again, I would say that our mentors are the core of our success and the reason why we exist. This next gentleman, our keynote speaker, Mr. Foreman. I met him a few years ago, and I'm going to be very honest about this. I met him a few years ago at Tufts University. He was giving a speech there. I get invited to a lot of things, and when I walked in the room, I had never met him before. And I said, what can this guy tell me? Light-skinned, curly hair, what does he know about Black people in incarceration? That's the first thing I said when I walked in. I said, this is going to be a bummer, right? But this is a true story, he'll tell you. When I got closer to him, he had a pin on his lapel, a SNCC pin. And what does that stand for? The student non? If you wear that pin, you got street cred, right? So I just want to say, as an author, as an educator, and as a champion for people that are marginalized and trying to reach their full potential, this guy's a champion and he's a hero. Mr. George Foreman. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I was wearing that pin. Otherwise, I would have been written off. It is a great honor to be part of your 25th anniversary celebration. I mean, 25 years. Sit with that. Sit with that. This is no small feat for an organization. It is hard enough to start a worthy project. Hard enough for a few dedicated people to come together with a meaningful idea and try to launch something. But it is much, much harder to keep it going, to grow and to thrive, to attract more volunteers, to weather funding challenges, and to navigate complicated political environments. So I know y'all are not the type, I can already tell from the conversations, you're not the type to celebrate yourselves. But I would just like to just start right now by asking you, each of you, to turn, and if there's somebody near you who you don't know super well, and even if you know your neighbor, that's okay. Just introduce yourself and just take a moment to thank that person next to you for what they have done to make this organization be able to be here for 25 years. So just take a moment to do that. All right, everybody. I can tell with this group, y'all have a lot to talk about. But Arthur told me to keep us on a he told me he wants me to keep it moving a little bit. So I'm going to rein that conversation in and just thank you all for taking the time to do that. You know, sometimes when I speak to groups, I have to spend my time explaining what's wrong with our criminal system. I have to outline all the ways in which it's unforgiving and brutal and racist. I talk to people that need to be taught that the United States is the world's leader in incarceration, that our incarceration rates have increased 700% just in my lifetime, that a black person is 4 times more likely to go to prison or jail in their lifetime than a white person, that the justice you receive in our courts will too often be determined not by your guilt or innocence, but by the size of your bank account. But with this group of committed mentors and volunteers and teachers, I have no business coming to talk to you about that. I have no need to tell you what you already know. So instead of doing that, I thought what I could do today was I could honor you. I thought about, well, how can I partake with you in a celebration of your mission and your achievements in your 25 years? And so I thought I might do that by sharing some principles that I've used to guide my walk through this world, principles that I know many of you live as well, and that I hope by reflecting on those together, we might come out of this evening rejuvenated and recommitted to the justice work that we all believe in. So I'm going to share tonight just 3 principles with you. And the first one is to never, ever give away your power. Now, I learned this lesson from my mom. I learned this lesson over and over again through my upbringing. But there's one story in particular that I think really captures how she taught me this lesson. I was in 10th grade and I had started at a new high school. And on my first or second day in school, I was in the bathroom and I saw something that made me uncomfortable. It was a group of kids was bullying another kid. And it wasn't physical, but it was words and it was taunts, and I could see that they hurt. And the kid was being bullied because of how he dressed and walked. And I didn't even really have the words for it at the time. But now I know it was because he was being bullied because of his emerging gender identity and expression. But even then, I knew what I was seeing was wrong. And after it happened that night, I came home and I told my mom about what I had seen. Now, my mom, the reason I was wearing that SNCC pin is that my mom was in the civil rights movement with my dad in the 1960s. My parents were an interracial couple. My dad is black, my mom is white. They were an interracial couple back when those marriages were illegal in many states in this country. They were members of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. My mom had stood up to racism, had taken down segregation. Right? She knew a thing or two about confronting injustice. So I told her my story of what I had seen, and I was proud because I didn't just have a complaint. I had ideas for what could be done in response. I had ideas for what the principal could do. I had ideas for what the assistant principal could do. I even had an idea for what my mom could do. My mom was one of those parents, and I know there's nobody in here like this. She was one of those parents who was always up in the school advocating and complaining about something. And most of the time, of course, as a kid, I didn't want her there. But now I was like, great, here is something you can go and advocate and complain about. And my mom listened to me carefully, and when I was done, she said, you know what, James, I'm glad you told me about this, and I'm glad that you have ideas for what can be done. But she said, I just have one question for you. And I said, what's that? And she said, well, what are you going to do? Remember, I remember her telling me, she said, James, you will have regrets in life, but I can promise you that you will never, ever regret the choice to stand up for a person who needs support in a moment of need. So she said, what are you going to do about it? See, what my mom was saying was, don't give up your power. She was saying that if I wanted the change to take place, I had to own my own power, my own ability to do something in response. Okay, that's a principle. Never give away your power. But once we've accepted our power to make change, how do we go about it? And that brings me to the second principle that I want to mention tonight, which is one that is near and dear to the hearts of everybody in this room. But it's the importance of building relationships with people who have been most directly harmed by the injustice that you want to confront. And this can be hard to do. So, my life's work is devoted to attempting to dismantle this system that we now call mass incarceration. And I write about, I teach, I give speeches about this issue. But a few years ago, with my mom's voice ringing inside of me, I realized that there was a risk, really even for me, and there was a risk that the people that I saw myself as working on behalf of might become abstractions, could become numbers. So a few years ago, I was trained by an organization called the Inside Out Prison Exchange. And I learned to teach a class that I normally teach at Yale inside a prison. So some of my students from Yale come, and the class is made up half of students from Yale and half of students who are incarcerated in the prison, studying the same materials as equals in a seminar setting. And I teach a class on the criminal legal system. I used to call it the criminal justice system, but like a lot of people, I've moved away from giving that name justice to a system that delivers so little of it. That teaching in prison, it's the most powerful teaching that I've ever done. Right? It's powerful for this reason. We're taking two groups of people that prison is designed to keep apart. Prisoners who are supposed to have no future, and university students who are supposed to be our future. And it's putting them together in relationship, in dialogue, in community. And something powerful comes out of the experience of using the setting of an academic classroom to breach those prison walls and tear down those barriers. Y'all know it up here. You've got one of the statistics. Another one, the Rand Corporation reports that for every dollar we as a society spend on education in prison, we receive $5 in return, because people who have had the chance to become educated inside are more likely to be employed and less likely to commit a crime when they're released. But those outcomes, they're important and funders care about them, but they really just scratch the surface of what really matters. The real change that takes place, I haven't taught for a couple of years because of COVID, but at the end of the last semester that I taught, a student wrote this in his final evaluation. The final evaluation asked them to talk about what they like and didn't like about the program. And he said, I liked the law and the policy that we learned in this class. He said, but most of all, what I liked was that every week when I entered the classroom and I saw the students who had traveled a long way from Yale to sit in our seminar, and I saw you, the professor, and I saw my fellow classmates from around the prison, I knew at that moment I was entering a place of learning. I was entering a place where I would be treated like I had something to say, like I was smart. A place where I would be treated like, and some days I would even feel like an intellectual. And he said the walls and the guards and the culture of this prison, they tell me the opposite of that every day. But I can use my 2 hours here in seminar like a coat of armor that will help get me through the week until I come back and see you again. Now, another advantage of working in close relationship with the people most directly affected by injustices is that you learn things that influence your pathway going forward. And for me, that learning came because each semester, towards the end of the semester normally, one or more of my incarcerated students would end up asking me a question that went like this. Professor Foreman, do you think that I, somebody with a criminal record, could ever become a lawyer? Remember, we were studying the legal system. And I would assure them each time they asked that it was possible. And I would give them readings from people who had made it from prison to law school. But over time, I began to see that while I was instilling belief, and it is essential, that at least in this context, belief was just the first step. My students needed a pathway in addition to the belief. My incarcerated students were all poor. They had attended segregated, underfunded schools. They all saw the LSAT, the law school, the test you have to take to get into law school, as an impossible hurdle. They didn't have money for prep courses, and they didn't have mentors to guide them through the admissions process. So if I was serious about my statement that they could be a lawyer, I needed to do something concrete to make that happen. So 2 years ago, 2020, along with an intrepid group of law students, we put together a program that we call Access to Law School. And I'm sharing this with you because I've learned so much. I'm about to go home and start New Haven Partakers. You don't even know. So I have learned so much tonight about the power of what you all are doing, and I want to just share a couple minutes to tell you about this path that I've started to walk down. The program is built around 3 core ideas. First, certain groups are historically and dramatically underrepresented in the legal profession, in New Haven, in Connecticut, in Massachusetts, nationwide. Second, this underrepresentation is not because of a lack of interest or ability, but rather a lack of support and opportunity. And third, and crucially, there is something that every university including mine, can do about it. You know, one of my constant messages to my students is that in a world of too many injustices to count them all, you have to land somewhere and try to make a difference, right? You can't do everything. Y'all know this, but my students don't. You can't do everything. So you have to pick a place. And when you pick a place, pick something you're good at. Well, we're a law school. I'm a law teacher. My students are at Yale, so obviously they figured out the admissions process. So if we're going to be good at anything, we better be good at helping people get into and succeed in law school. So we're 3 years into our work. Our fellows, we have 40 of them currently, are overwhelmingly first generation, most from immigrant families, most struggled in college. Some have been incarcerated or struggled with addiction and trauma, or all of the above. We spend 2 years together, and each of our fellows is paired with a Yale law student who becomes their coach and their mentor. And we spend 2 years teaching the LSAT and mentoring and coaching and writing applications and exploring law school and legal careers. And while it is early, I don't have 25 years of results to point to, but our first group of fellows that started with us a couple of years ago is now in law school. So we have, oh, thank you. So we have 8 of them that just started last month. 6 are at University of Connecticut, 1 is at Villanova, and 1 is at Yale. Now, I've spoken about this program so far in the context of individual success, right? 1 person at a time getting into law school. But my goal and my hope is that over time, our impact will be community-wide. I mean, New Haven, I come to you from a small town. New Haven is small, right? 100,000 people. And our fellows come from concentrated neighborhoods. Many of them come from and live in the neighborhoods that are just around the university. And so we see this concentration as working to our advantage because we imagine a collective that will draw strength from their numbers. The first 8 that I told you about, then 10, 20, 30, then 50, 100 more New Haveners from underrepresented groups who have done what people thought was impossible, what sometimes they themselves thought was impossible. They made it to and through law school. They're lawyers now. And we believe that that's going to forever change the city. Now, as you probably can tell, like most of y'all, I am a hopeful, solutions-oriented person. But it is not always easy. Sometimes, a lot, it seems like nowadays, the conditions around us don't seem to call for hopefulness. Sometimes we can feel desperately outnumbered. And in these moments, I think we have to remember one final principle that I'll share with you, which is that hope is a practice. And I learned this lesson from my dad. My dad died over 15 years ago. And a few years before he died, we were watching a movie about the civil rights movement. And when it ended, I asked him, what did he think about it? He said he liked it. He said he liked that they were showing this history on film because more people watch movies than read books. I can tell you now, as an author, that is absolutely true. But he said what he didn't like was how they made it seem like everybody was in the civil rights movement back then. He said it wasn't like that. We were unpopular. We were few. He talked about how he would go to recruit on college campuses, and they would try to recruit students to come down to Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia to fight segregation. And he and the other SNCC recruiters would be run off campus by the faculty, by the administration. And now, those same colleges, because I go to speak at them, they have photo displays honoring their alumni who went south to the civil rights movement. Dr. King, the most revered of all of our civil rights heroes, he was unpopular when he died. Gallup did a poll. Martin Luther King had a 2/3 unfavorable rating in the months before he was killed. Even the famous March on Washington was unpopular when it happened. Another polling organization, they're out of business now, but they existed in the 60s, called Roper. They did a poll 2 months before the March on Washington. And the question that they asked was this: do you think that the planned demonstration in Washington, D.C. will help or hurt the cause of the Negro? 60% of Americans said they thought it would hurt. Now, there were 250,000 people at that march, and that's a lot. But a decade later, 10 million people will tell you they were there. So my dad said, look, man, he said, look, I'm not telling you this because I want credit for being there first. He said, I'm telling you this because I think that the way that they teach the history of the civil rights movement is demoralizing for your generation and for future generations. Because he said, in your generation, you see an issue, you call a meeting, and 6 people show up, and 5 of them were at the last meeting. And then you see thousands of people marching in Selma and Montgomery, and you wonder, well, what's wrong with us? What's wrong with my cause? My dad said, listen, here's the thing. When you are fighting a deep and profound and apparently insurmountable injustice, people are going to tell you that change is impossible. But if you, and only if you, ignore them, and you march and you mobilize and you litigate and you educate and you mentor and you win and you make the change, those same people who told you that it was impossible will turn around and say, oh, I knew that was going to happen. That was inevitable. Oh, yeah, and I was there, they'll say. And then somebody will make a movie about it. So here's what I believe. When you decide not to give away your power, when you work in relationship and community, when you remain hopeful even when the conditions do not appear to call for it, one day you all in this room are going to make college education in prisons routine in Massachusetts. You will create a world in which everyone coming out of prison has a mentor and a supporter to help them create a new life. Even more than that, you will overcome mass incarceration and you will place it with a system that protects and heals and restores communities. You will replace it with a system that deserves to have the word justice in its title. And when you do that, when you achieve the thing that they said would never happen, they're going to make a movie about your work. And when they do that, I want you to know that I will be there at opening night, sitting right next to Arthur with popcorn in my hand, and I will stand and applaud and cheer everything that you all have done. Thank you. I wish you another impactful, mission-driven 25 years, and I can't wait to come back for the 50th anniversary celebration. Thank you.
You're too funny. I need that flick. I need that flick pen. Oh, too funny. I remember being invited to speak at Yale, and I went there. I got lost because I was using the GPS and it didn't want to work. And I was in this really crappy neighborhood, and I saw this homeless person, and I said, well, maybe I can get out. I'm kind of big. I'll get out and ask him. I said, do you know where Yale is? Because I've been looking for it. You know what he told me? You're here. True story on my mother's honor. He said, you are here. He pointed right across the street. He said, you arrived. This work that we do and this event tonight and all the stuff that Partakers does. Again, there's a lot of wheels turning, but I wanted you to know that my partner in crime, no pun intended here, is Jacqueline Fishman, our board member and our marketing director. If you have not seen her, she's the one that's responsible for this beautiful layout that you see in all of the events. So if you could give her a round of applause. She's pretty shy. Doesn't like a picture taken, so she's not around. That was the lady that was meeting you at the desk when you came in. Earlier, you heard from some of our mentors and our board members, and you heard from my mentor, Reverend Margie King Sapphire. I can't thank you enough for being here this afternoon, and I hope that you'll stay with us and we'll see you in the future. Thank you.